Welcome to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Reginald Hawthorne. Tonight, we embark on a chilling journey into the world of Agatha Christie with a brand new Poirot adventure, The Sinister Mask of Violet Tower. Settle in, dear listeners, for this is a long tale, perfect for those cozy evenings by the fire or late-night drives. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more classic mysteries narrated just for you. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? London? Paris? Or perhaps somewhere more exotic? Chapter 1. The Invitation to Violet Tower. In the autumn of 1927, London was cloaked in a fog so thick it seemed to cradle the city's secrets, muffling the clatter of hooves and the hum of early motorcars. At Whitehaven Mansions, in a meticulously ordered apartment, Hercule Poirot sat in his favorite armchair, his small, neat frame dwarfed by the plush upholstery. His waxed moustache gleamed under the lamplight, and his green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, scanned a pile of correspondence with the precision of a watchmaker. A steaming tisane rested on the table beside him, its herbal aroma mingling with the faint scent of beeswax from polished furniture. Opposite him, sprawled comfortably in a leather chair, was Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend and confidant, puffing contentedly on a briar pipe. The day's copy of the Times lay open on his lap, though his attention drifted to the crackle of the fire. "Mon ami Hastings," Poirot said suddenly, his voice clipped yet melodious. "Regardez ceci, an invitation most curious, most intriguing." He held up a cream-colored envelope, its surface embossed with a violet wax seal in the shape of a mask. The wax caught the light, shimmering like amethyst. Hastings set down his pipe and leaned forward, curiosity piqued. "What's this, Poirot? Another society gala? You're not exactly the dancing type." Poirot's lips twitched in a faint smile as he slid the card from the envelope with delicate fingers. "Not a gala, Hastings, but a summons to mystery. Écoutez," he read aloud in his precise clarity. He tapped the paper thoughtfully. "This revelation and these shadows, they stir the little grey cells, Hastings. Lord Beaumont is a collector of antiquities, oui? Masks, artifacts, relics of distant lands. Why invite a detective to a masquerade unless trouble brews?" Hastings chuckled, folding his newspaper. "Probably just wants to show off some new trinket. You know how these aristocrats are, love a bit of drama. Still, a weekend in the country might do us good. Fresh air, good wine." Poirot's expression remained serious. "No, mon ami. There is a scent of danger here. We shall accept, but with eyes open." 2 days later, their train steamed through the rolling Surrey countryside, where autumn painted the woods in fiery hues of crimson and gold. The fog had lifted, but a crisp chill hung in the air, and the distant hills loomed under a sky heavy with clouds. At a quaint rural station, a gleaming Rolls-Royce awaited, its driver a taciturn man in livery, who tipped his cap and said little. The journey to Violet Tower wound through dense forests, the road narrowing as it climbed toward the estate. At last, the trees parted, and the manor came into view. A grand Georgian structure of honey-coloured stone, its symmetry marred by the striking anomaly at its heart. A towering spire of violet-hued stone, its surface catching the fading light like a gem. The tower seemed ancient, almost otherworldly, its narrow windows like slits in a fortress. "Rather imposing, isn't it?" Hastings remarked, craning his neck as they stepped from the car. "Imposing, oui, but also secretive," Poirot replied, adjusting his hat. "This tower, it holds stories, Hastings. We shall listen." They were met at the entrance by Mr. Graves, the butler, a man in his 60s with a face like weathered oak and eyes that betrayed no emotion. His black suit was immaculate, his movements precise. "Welcome to Violet Tower, gentlemen," he said, in a low, measured tone. "His lordship awaits you in the drawing-room." The interior of his eyes twinkled with a mix of joviality and unease. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, delighted you could come," he exclaimed, shaking their hands vigorously. "I trust the journey was pleasant?" "Most satisfactory, Lord Beaumont," Poirot replied, inclining his head. "Your invitation was most compelling." Beside Beaumont stood his wife, Lady Evelyn Beaumont, a statuesque woman in her early 40s, her auburn hair swept elegantly atop her head. Her silk gown shimmered, but her smile was cool, her grey eyes assessing Poirot with a flicker of wariness. "We hope you'll find our little gathering diverting," she said, her voice smooth as polished glass. "Reginald does love his theatrics." The other guests began to arrive, each introduced with the practiced ease of a seasoned host. First was Miss Clara Beaumont, the Lord's niece, a vivacious woman of 25 with bobbed chestnut hair and a mischievous smile. Her emerald dress hugged her figure, and her laughter was infectious as she greeted Hastings with a playful curtsy. "Captain, you must promise me a dance at the masquerade." Next came Dr. Elias Thorne, the family physician, a wiry man in his late 30s with spectacles perched on a sharp nose. His hands twitched nervously as he nodded politely, his eyes darting toward Lady Evelyn. Then Victor Langford, a tall, brooding business associate of Beaumont's, his dark hair slicked back and a faint scar tracing his left cheek, giving him a dangerous air. Finally, Mrs. Isolde Hargrove, a widowed cousin in her 50s, her severe black dress adorned with a string of pearls. Her expression was one of quiet resentment, her lips pursed as she surveyed the room. Cocktails were served, martinis and sherry in delicate glasses, and the conversation turned lively. Lord Beaumont dominated, regaling the group with tales of his travels to Egypt, Peru, and beyond, each story punctuated by gestures toward his masks. "This one," he said, pointing to a jade dragon, "cost me a fortune in Peking, worth every penny." Clara giggled, sipping her drink, while Langford's eyes lingered on her. Dr. Thorne, the sinister mask of Aken, an Egyptian relic from the 18th dynasty. They say it brings death to those who wear it unworthily. A curse, if you believe such things. He laughed, but Poirot caught a fleeting shadow in his eyes. The group adjourned to prepare for the ball, but Beaumont detained Poirot briefly. "Monsieur Poirot," he said in a low voice, "I meant what I wrote. There are tensions here, old grudges, secrets. I trust you'll keep an eye out." Poirot inclined his head. "Rest assured, my lord. The little grey cells are always alert." As he and Hastings retired to their rooms, the detective's mind churned. "This is no mere revelry, Hastings," he murmured, adjusting his tie in a mirror. "There is a darkness in this house, and the mask may be its heart." Outside, the storm grew fiercer, lightning illuminating the Violet Tower like a beacon. The stage was set for murder. Chapter 2. The Locked Chamber of Death. The masquerade ball at Violet Tower began at the stroke of midnight, transforming the grand ballroom into a kaleidoscope of color and shadow. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the polished parquet floor, where guests swirled in their finery, their faces hidden behind masks of silk, feathers, and lacquered wood. A gramophone spun a lively jazz tune, its syncopated rhythm mingling with the laughter and clink of champagne glasses. The air was thick with perfume, cigar smoke, and the electric anticipation of a night unbound by convention. Outside, the storm that had threatened all evening unleashed its fury, rain lashing the tall windows and thunder rolling like a warning from the heavens. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the ballroom, a diminutive figure in a simple Venetian mask of black and gold, his sharp green eyes scanning the crowd. His immaculate evening suit, tailored to perfection, contrasted with the flamboyant costumes around him. He sipped a glass of sparkling water, preferring clarity to champagne, and catalogued every detail. The way Miss Clara Beaumont twirled in her emerald gown, her peacock-feathered mask catching the light. The stiff posture of Dr. Elias Thorne, whose plain domino mask did little to hide his nervous...
"Eyes open," Poirot advised. "The little grey cells sense a shadow beneath the merriment." At the centre of the room, Lord Reginald Beaumont held court, unmistakable despite his disguise. He still wore the sinister mask of Aken, the Egyptian relic unveiled earlier that evening. Its gold and lapis surface gleamed, its hollow eyes giving it a menacing air, though Beaumont's booming laughter softened its effect. He danced with Lady Evelyn, whose silver mask and sapphire gown made her a vision of icy elegance, though her movements seemed mechanical, her smile forced. Mrs. Isolde Hargrove, in a severe black mask adorned with jet beads, stood apart, sipping sherry and muttering to herself. The butler, Mr. Graves, moved silently among the guests, his plain black mask blending with his sombre attire as he refilled glasses. As the clock neared 1 o'clock, Beaumont excused himself, his voice muffled by the mask. "A quick rest in the tower, my friends. This thing's dashed heavy." He gestured to the sinister mask, drawing laughs from the crowd. He ascended the spiral staircase to the tower chamber, a circular room at the estate's heart where the mask had been unveiled earlier. Mr. Graves followed, locking the heavy oak door to the staircase behind him with the only key, which he pocketed with a nod to Poirot. The ball continued, the music growing wilder, the guests more uninhibited. Poirot remained vigilant, noting Clara's flirtatious whispers to Langford, Thorne's lingering gaze on Lady Evelyn, and Hargrove's sharp glances at the staircase door. The storm outside intensified, lightning illuminating the violet-hued tower through the ballroom's windows. At precisely 2:03 a.m., a piercing scream shattered the revelry. The gramophone needle scratched to a halt, and all eyes turned to Lady Evelyn, who stood trembling at the foot of the tower staircase, her silver mask askew. "Reginald!" she cried, her voice raw with panic. "He's not responding. I called up to him, but nothing." The guests surged toward the staircase, Poirot and Hastings at the forefront. Graves, his face pale beneath his mask, fumbled with the key and unlocked the door. The group climbed the winding stairs, their footsteps echoing in the narrow stone passage.
Pedestal, where the sinister mask had been displayed earlier that evening. The mask still covered his face, but it was tilted, revealing a ghastly pallor beneath. A dagger, its hilt encrusted with amethysts to match the tower's stone, protruded from his chest. Blood had soaked his evening shirt, pooling on the ancient Persian rug beneath him. The room was silent, save for the distant howl of the storm. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed, kneeling beside the body, his gloved hands careful not to disturb the scene. "He is dead, stabbed through the heart." Lady Evelyn collapsed into Dr. Thorne's arms, her sobs muffled. Clara gasped, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Hargrove whispered, "The curse, the mask's curse." Poirot's eyes darted around the chamber. It was a perfect locked room. The oak door had been bolted from within, the key still in Beaumont's pocket. The iron-barred windows showed no signs of tampering, their frames rusted shut. The stone walls were solid, the floor unyielding, and the ceiling too high for access. A single violet petal, delicate and out of place, lay near the body, its hue vivid against the rug. A smudged footprint, barely visible in the dust near the pedestal, caught Poirot's eye, as did a faint scratch on the mask's interior. "This is murder," Poirot declared, his voice steady. An impossible crime. The locked room defies all logic. Hastings, pale beneath his harlequin mask, whispered, "How, Poirot? No one could have entered. The door was locked, the bolt intact, the windows barred. The little grey cells will find a way," Poirot replied, rising. "We must preserve the scene. No one leaves this house." The guests murmured in shock, their masks now seeming to hide guilt rather than identity. Poirot instructed Graves to lock the tower staircase once more and summon the police, though the storm would delay their arrival. As dawn approached, Inspector Japp arrived, his trench coat dripping, his expression one of weary familiarity. "Poirot, you old devil," he grumbled. "Figures you'd be at the heart of this. All right, give me the facts."
Behavior. Motive. Loss of inheritance. Dr. Thorne, adjusting his spectacles nervously, said, "I treated Reginald for a weak heart. He owed me substantial fees, unpaid. Motive. Debt." Victor Langford, his scar stark in the lamplight, growled, "Beaumont swindled me in a business deal. Cost me thousands." Motive. Revenge. Mrs. Hargrove, clutching her pearls, muttered, "He cheated my late husband out of family land years ago. I never forgave him." Motive. Resentment. Mr. Graves, stoic as ever, claimed, "I served his lordship loyally, though my wages were modest." Motive. Underpayment, perhaps? Poirot noted additional clues. The violet petal matched flowers in a vase in Lady Evelyn's room. The footprint was small, possibly a woman's. The mask's scratch suggested tampering or a message. A folded note in Beaumont's pocket read, "Beware the mask's shadow," in an unfamiliar hand. As the first light of dawn broke through the storm clouds, the estate buzzed with tension. The guests avoided each other's gazes, their secrets laid bare yet unresolved. Poirot stood by a window, twirling his mustache, his mind racing. "This is no simple murder, Hastings," he murmured. "The locked room, the mask, the petal, they are pieces of a puzzle most diabolical." Hastings shivered. "But who, Poirot, and how?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "That, mon ami, is what we shall discover." Chapter 3. Poirot Takes Command. The first light of dawn crept through the storm-battered windows of Violet Tower, casting a pallid glow over the drawing room where the shaken guests had gathered. The air was heavy with the scent of damp wool and extinguished cigars, the remnants of the masquerade, now a grim memory. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his diminutive frame commanding attention despite the chaos of the night. His black patent shoes gleamed, his suit remained pristine, and his waxed mustache was as precise as ever. Beside him, Captain Hastings fidgeted, his harlequin costume discarded. Mrs. Isolde Hargrove, rigid and silent, her pearls glinting like accusations. And Mr. Graves, the butler, standing apart, his face an unreadable mask. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice calm yet authoritative. "Lord Beaumont was murdered between 1 and 2 o'clock this morning, in a room locked and bolted from within. The dagger from his own collection was wiped clean. The windows are barred, the walls solid. Yet a murderer struck. We shall discover how and who." Hastings whispered, "It's like a conjuring trick, Poirot. No one could get in or out." "Précisément, Hastings," Poirot replied. "But every trick has its mechanism. We begin with the scene." With Japp's permission, Poirot led the group back to the tower chamber, now cordoned off. The storm had abated, but the air in the circular room was damp and cold, the violet stone walls glistening faintly. Beaumont's body had been moved for examination, but the blood-stained rug remained, as did the pedestal where the sinister mask of Arkin had stood. The mask itself, now in Japp's custody, was locked in a case downstairs. Poirot knelt, his magnifying glass glinting as he inspected the scene. The oak door, splintered from being forced open, showed an intact bolt on the inside, its key still in Beaumont's pocket. The iron-barred windows, high and narrow, were rusted shut, their frames unmarred. The stone floor revealed no trapdoors, and the vaulted ceiling, 15 feet above, offered no access. Poirot traced the smudged footprint near the pedestal, small, perhaps a woman's, and plucked the violet petal, holding it to the light. "Curieux," he murmured. "This petal is fresh, yet no such flowers grow in this room." He examined the pedestal, noting a faint scratch on its edge, as if something heavy had been dragged. The rug, thick and Persian, bore traces of dust disturbed by the footprint. A faint smell lingered, not blood, but something acrid, like burnt paper. "Anything, Poirot?" Japp asked, hovering. "Patience, Inspector. The clues speak, but softly." Returning to the drawing-room, Poirot began interviews.
Stammered. "I treated Reginald for palpitations, a weak heart. He owed me over £500 in fees, unpaid for months. I pressed him last night. He laughed it off." Victor Langford's voice was cold. "Beaumont cheated me on a mining venture, claimed the land was worthless, then sold it for a fortune. That scar?" He touched his cheek. "From a duel in Cairo, thanks to his lies. I wanted justice, not murder." Mrs. Hargrove's tone was venomous. "Reginald swindled my husband out of our family's land 20 years ago. Forged deeds, left us penniless. I came to confront him about a new will, one that might restore what's mine." Mr. Graves, impassive, said, "I served his lordship faithfully for 30 years. My wages were modest, yes, but I had no quarrel. I locked the tower door at 1 o'clock, as he requested." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you saw no one else ascend?" "None, sir," Graves replied. Hastings whispered, "They've all got reasons, Poirot. Money, revenge, betrayal. It's a nest of vipers." "Oui, but motives are not proof," Poirot said. "We seek the how as much as the who." A search of the guests' rooms, authorized by Japp, yielded tantalizing clues. In Lady Evelyn's boudoir, a vase of violet flowers matched the petal, but she claimed they were a gift from Beaumont. In Dr. Thorne's medical bag, vials of morphine and strychnine raised eyebrows, though he insisted they were for patients. In Langford's room, a dagger identical to the murder weapon lay in a drawer, its blade clean. Clara's room held love letters from Langford, hinting at a secret engagement contingent on her inheritance. Mrs. Hargrove's suitcase contained a legal document, a copy of a will naming her as a beneficiary, dated only weeks ago. Poirot paused in the library, where Beaumont's collection of books on antiquities lined the walls. A tome on Egyptian curses caught his eye, bookmarked at a passage about the Mask of Akhenaten. "He who wears it unworthily shall face death's shadow." Beside it, a scrap of paper bore the same phrase as the note in Beaumont's pocket. B observed their exchange, his mind cataloguing. He returned to the tower chamber alone, testing theories. Could the bolt have been manipulated? He examined the lock, finding no scratches. The windows? He tugged at the bars. Solid. Yet the footprint nagged him. He measured it. Size 5. Delicate. Possibly a woman's shoe. Lady Evelyn wore size 6. Clara 5. Hargrove 7. A clue, or another misdirection. As evening fell, Poirot gathered the guests in the dining hall, his presence calming their bickering. "We are close to the truth," he said, "but the shadows are deep. Someone in this house knows more than they say. A new clue emerged. A servant found a silk thread, blue and fine, caught on the dagger's hilt. It matched Lady Evelyn's gown. She gasped. "I never touched it." "Planted, perhaps?" Poirot suggested, his eyes scanning faces for a flinch. Outside, the storm's remnants rumbled, and the violet tower loomed like a sentinel. Poirot paced the gardens, his cane tapping the gravel. The method, Hastings. How was the room penetrated? The answer lies in the impossible. Hastings frowned. Could it be suicide? Beaumont staging a curse? No, Poirot said. The dagger's angle is wrong. Struck from above, not self-inflicted. This is murder, cunningly disguised. As night descended, Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the petal, the footprint, the note, the thread. The mask's scratches hinted at a hidden purpose. A message, perhaps, etched in haste. The truth was close, but elusive, like a shadow in the storm. Chapter 4. Shadows of Deception. The second day at Violet Tower dawned grey and heavy, the storm's remnants cloaking the Surrey hills in mist. The manor, once vibrant with masquerade revelry, now felt oppressive, its violet stone spire looming like a silent judge. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in a charcoal suit, stood in the library. Poirot replied, "The clues multiply, but not all are true. We shall separate the wheat from the chaff." Poirot returned to the tower chamber, now guarded by a constable. The blood-stained rug had been photographed and removed, but the pedestal remained, its faint scratch nagging at Poirot's mind. He examined it closely, noting a tiny notch as if a sharp object had grazed it. The violet petal, preserved in an envelope, matched those in Lady Evelyn's vase, but a gardener confirmed the flowers were common in the estate's greenhouse, accessible to all. The smudged footprint, size 5, was dusted for prints, but yielded none. Poirot knelt, sniffing the air. The acrid scent he'd noted yesterday lingered, faint but persistent. "A chemical, perhaps?" he murmured, filing the detail away. Back in the drawing room, Poirot intensified his interviews, probing for inconsistencies. Lady Evelyn, composed but pale, reiterated her story. "I was in the ballroom until I called for Reginald at 2. I never went near the tower before then. That thread, someone must have taken it from my gown." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet, madame, your flowers are distinctive. Did anyone borrow them?" She hesitated. "Clara admired them yesterday. She picked one." Clara, summoned next, flushed with indignation. "I took one petal as a keepsake, yes, but I was dancing all night. Victor can vouch for me. We were together until the scream." Victor Langford, his scar stark in the morning light, confirmed her alibi, but added a twist. "I stepped out for a smoke at 1:15, as the maid saw. But I swear I stayed by the terrace door, not the tower. Someone's trying to pin this on me." Poirot noted a discrepancy. The maid's report placed Langford closer to the tower staircase than the terrace. A red herring or a lie? He pressed further. "Monsieur, your dagger, identical to the murder weapon. How do you explain it?" Langford's jaw tightened. "Beaumont gave it to me years ago, a gift from his collection. I kept it as a memento. Nothing Was fresh, not hours old. Another misdirection. A search of the grounds yielded a tantalizing clue. A groundskeeper found a burnt scrap of paper in the garden near the tower, its edges charred but bearing the words "shadow"
and mask, in the same elegant script as Beaumont's note. Poirot pocketed it, suspecting a connection. He also discovered a hidden dumbwaiter behind a panel in the tower's base, used to deliver food to the chamber in centuries past. It was narrow, too small for a person, but large enough for a weapon. Could the dagger have been sent up after Beaumont locked himself in? He tested the mechanism. It creaked, but functioned. A possibility, but the bolted chamber door remained a barrier. By midday, a maid reported another oddity. A violet petal caught in Mrs. Hargrove's shawl, found in the laundry. Hargrove denied visiting the tower. "I despise flowers," she snapped. "Someone's playing tricks." Poirot's suspicions grew. The petal's placement seemed deliberate, like the silk thread. He examined the sinister mask of Aachen, now in Japp's evidence case. Its interior scratches formed a pattern, not random, but a crude symbol, perhaps an ankh, the Egyptian cross of life. Was it a message? Or damage from age? He noted a faint powdery residue inside the mask, invisible to the naked eye, but detectable under his magnifying glass. "Curieux," he said. "This requires analysis." Hastings, assisting with measurements, suggested, could the mask be rigged? A trap, like in those adventure tales? Poirot shook his head. "No, Hastings. The mask is a symbol, not a weapon, but its role is not yet clear." A new red herring emerged. A stable boy claimed to have seen Dr. Thorne near the tower at 1:30 a.m., carrying a medical bag. Thorne denied it, insisting he was with Lady Evelyn in the ballroom. Evelyn corroborated, but her timeline was vague. She admitted to stepping out briefly to fetch a shawl. Poirot tested the stable boy's sightline. The storm's darkness made his claim dubious. Another false clue. Tensions among the guests escalated. Clara accused Langford of using her for money. Mysterious I.H. Isolde Hargrove? She denied it, but her handwriting matched the ledger's annotations. A financial motive, perhaps, beyond her stated grudge. The acrid scent in the tower nagged Poirot. He consulted the estate's chemist, who identified it as amyl nitrate, a heart stimulant, often in Thorne's medical kit. Had Beaumont been drugged before the stabbing? The coroner's preliminary report arrived. Death by dagger. No poison, but a high heart rate suggested stress or stimulation. By evening, a false accusation flared. Clara, tearful, pointed at Thorne. "He had poisons. He hated Uncle for threatening him." Thorne, outraged, produced a vial of amyl nitrate, claiming it was for Beaumont's heart condition. Poirot examined it, unopened. Another dead end? Poirot paced the gardens, the violet tower looming above. "The red herrings multiply, Hastings," he said. "The thread, the petal, the footprint, they are distractions. But the mask, the note, the scent, these are the keys." Hastings frowned. "But the locked room, Poirot, how?" "The how is in the why," Poirot replied. "We are close, mon ami. But the truth wears its own mask." As night fell, the guests grew paranoid, locking their doors. Poirot, undeterred, prepared for the next phase, his little gray cells weaving the clues into a tapestry of suspicion. Chapter 5. The Storm Within. By the afternoon of the second day, Violet Tower seemed to pulse with unease, its violet stone spire a silent sentinel under a sky bruised with storm clouds. The manor's opulent halls, once alive with masquerade revelry, now echoed with whispers of fear and accusation. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit unrumpled despite the sleepless hours, stood in the drawing room, his green eyes sharp as he reviewed his notes. Captain Hastings, rubbing his temples, sat nearby, the weight of the investigation etching lines into his usually cheerful face. Inspector Japp had departed.
Isolde Hargrove sat rigid, her pearls clicking as she muttered about justice. Mr. Graves, the butler, moved with mechanical precision, serving tea no one touched. Poirot began the day's inquiries with a new focus: the timeline. "We know Lord Beaumont entered the tower at 1 o'clock, he said, addressing the group. The door was locked by Monsieur Graves. Lady Evelyn's scream came at 2:03 a.m. Yet the coroner suggests death around 1:30 a.m. What happened in that half hour? A new complication arose. Anonymous letters slipped under each suspect's door during the night. Poirot collected them, noting their identical elegant script. The same as the note in Beaumont's pocket: beware the mask's shadow. Lady Evelyn's letter accused her of an affair with Thorm. Clara's hinted at a secret pregnancy. Langford's referenced his swindled deal. Hargrove's mentioned her husband's forged deeds. Thorn's warned of his unpaid debts. Even Graves received one, alleging he'd stolen from Beaumont's collection. "Blackmail," Poirot murmured. "The killer stirs chaos to obscure their trail." Hastings whispered, "But who wrote them? The handwriting doesn't match anyone's." "Précisément," Poirot said. "A disguise, perhaps, or a confederate." Confrontations erupted. Clara, tearful, admitted to Poirot in private, "I'm with child. Victor's. Uncle found out days ago and threatened to disown me." Her motive deepened. Not just inheritance, but desperation to secure a future. Langford, overhearing, stormed in. "She's lying to trap me," he shouted, though his eyes betrayed concern. Poirot noted their dynamic: love tangled with ambition. Lady Evelyn, cornered about her affair, broke down. "Yes, Elias and we've been close for months. Reginald suspected, but I swear I didn't kill him." Thorne nodded, his voice trembling. "I'd lose everything if it came out, my practice, my reputation, but murder? Never." Mrs. Hargrove's composure cracked when Poirot presented the ledger from the library. "This I.H. You borrowed money from Beaumont, oui?" She paled. "A small loan, years ago, to survive after my husband's..." He dismissed it. The blood pattern confirmed a single, fatal strike. A new clue emerged. The mask's powdery residue, sent to a local chemist via a constable, was identified as talc, commonly used in cosmetics. Clara and Lady Evelyn both used talc-based powders. A deliberate plant or careless trace? Poirot examined the mask again, its ankh-shaped scratches clearer under sunlight. He hypothesized, had Beaumont scratched a message in his final moments? The ankh suggested life, or its end. The storm's return brought a near disaster. As Poirot crossed the ballroom, a chandelier crashed inches from him, crystals shattering across the floor. Hastings gasped, "Good Lord, Poirot, that was meant for you!" Poirot, unruffled, inspected the fixture's chain, cut cleanly, not frayed. "The killer grows desperate," he said. "They fear we are close." Suspicion turned to Langford, whose room contained a pocket knife sharp enough for the task. He denied it, claiming, "I was in the library all afternoon." A footman contradicted him, placing Langford near the ballroom at noon. Another red herring or a slip? Poirot uncovered a timeline discrepancy. Langford's watch, found in his room, was stopped at 1:15 a.m. The crystal cracked. A struggle, perhaps, Poirot mused. Langford claimed it broke days ago, but the glass shards were fresh. Clara, defending him, admitted, "He dropped it last night during our dance. I saw it." A deeper twist emerged from the library. Poirot found a hidden journal in Beaumont's desk, detailing his fear of betrayal.
An entry read, "The mask hides more than my face. It hides their greed." Was Beaumont aware of a plot? The journal mentioned a meeting with E.T., Elias Thorne, days before, discussing debts and secrets. Thorne, questioned, admitted. He asked about heart stimulants, said he felt watched. Poirot tested a new theory, the mask's hollow eyes. Climbing a ladder to the chamber's window, he peered through the bars, aligning his sight with
Found a torn glove in the garden, stained with blood, its size matching Clara's small hands. She gasped. "I lost that glove days ago." Poirot noted its fresh tear. Another plant? As night fell, the storm raged, lightning illuminating the violet tower. Poirot paced the conservatory, his mind a whirl of connections. The talc, the ankh, the loose bar, the stopped watch. "The killer is clever," he told Hastings, "but they have overplayed their hand. The storm within this house will break soon." Hastings shivered. "But the locked room, Poirot. It's impossible." "Non, mon ami," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "The impossible is merely a matter of perspective." Chapter 6. Echoes of the Past. The third morning at Violet Tower broke with an uneasy calm, the storm having subsided into a drizzle that cloaked the Surrey hills in a ghostly veil. The manor's violet stone spire stood resolute, its ancient presence a reminder of secrets older than the murder of Lord Reginald Beaumont. Hercule Poirot, his black suit as pristine as ever, stood in the library, surrounded by shelves of dusty tomes and the eerie gazes of Beaumont's mask collection. His green eyes gleamed with the intensity of a man nearing the heart of a mystery. Captain Hastings, bleary-eyed from another sleepless night, sipped coffee, his tweed jacket rumpled. "Poirot, this case is a labyrinth," Hastings said, setting down his cup. "The glove, the key, those letters, every clue seems to point to a different suspect. And that blasted locked room. Are we any closer?" Poirot twirled his cane, a faint smile playing beneath his waxed mustache. "Mon ami, we are on the cusp of revelation. The clues, the petal, the thread, the ankh, they are like notes in a symphony. We must hear the melody beneath the discord." With Inspector Japp still in London, awaiting the coroner's final report, Poirot had free rein. The guests, confined by the muddy roads and lingering tension, gathered in the drawing-room, their faces etched with paranoia. Lady Evelyn Beaumont, her elegance strained, was found dead in the same tower chamber, a dagger in his chest, wearing a ceremonial mask. The records called it a cursed death, blaming a masked figure seen fleeing the estate. Poirot noted the similarity: a locked room, a masked victim, a blade. "The past whispers to us," he told Hastings, "but is it truth or legend?" He examined the sinister mask of Aachen again, now in a locked evidence case. The ankh-shaped scratches inside suggested intent, not age. Using a jeweler's loupe, he confirmed the talc residue was concentrated near the eye holes, hinting at deliberate application. "The mask was handled," he murmured, "but by whom and why?" A new clue surfaced. The tower's clock, mounted above the chamber, had been tampered with. A groundskeeper reported its chimes were irregular the night of the murder, stopping entirely at 1:20 a.m. Poirot climbed to the clock's mechanism, finding a loosened gear. Sabotage, not malfunction. Could the time of death be wrong? The coroner's estimate of 1:30 a.m. relied on body temperature, but a manipulated clock suggested a staged timeline. Poirot tested a theory. Had the chamber door been bolted post-mortem? He examined the bolt's mechanism, finding faint scratches on its base, as if manipulated with a tool. A string trick, perhaps, to pull the bolt from outside? He rigged a test with twine, but the angle failed. The bolt was too heavy, yet the scratches persisted, a clue to an unknown method. Returning to the suspects, Poirot probed deeper. Lady Evelyn, confronted about the talc, admitted using it for her complexion, but swore she never touched the mask. "I found it repulsive," she said, shuddering. Poirot noted her bracelet, engraved with an ankh. "A gift from Reginald," she explained, "from his Egyptian travels." Clara, tearful, revealed more about her pregnancy. "Victor promised marriage, but only if I inherited. Uncle's threat to cut me off. It terrified me." Her glove, blood-stained and torn, was found in the garden. But duplicate key maintained his story. It was an old spare, never used. Poirot noticed a faint tremor in his hand. Nerves or guilt? A startling revelation came from the estate's archives. A hidden letter, dated 1920, described Beaumont's acquisition of the Mask of Aachen from a Cairo dealer who warned of its deathly aura. The letter mentioned a ritual, wearing the mask under a full moon, as occurred the night of the murder, invited doom. Was Beaumont's death staged to mimic the curse? Poirot noted the moon's phase through the tower window. Full, its light bathing the chamber. Another twist. A servant found a vial of amyl nitrate, half empty, in the greenhouse, near the violet flowers. Thorne claimed it wasn't his, but its presence suggested a medical angle. Had Beaumont been drugged to weaken him? The coroner's report, relayed by telegram, confirmed no poison, but the high heart rate hinted at stimulation. Poirot hypothesized. Amyl nitrate, inhaled via the mask's talc, could have accelerated Beaumont's heart, making the stabbing easier. Confrontations escalated. Clara accused Thorne of tampering with the mask. "You're a doctor. You could have rigged it." Thorne retorted, "And you could have slipped something in his drink, desperate for money." Hargrove laughed bitterly. "You're all fools. Reginald's greed killed him." Lady Evelyn, silent, clutched her ankh bracelet, her eyes distant. Poirot's trap from Chapter 4 bore fruit. Langford, rattled by the footprint comment, let slip. "No one could have faked that print. It's too precise. How did he know its details?" Poirot pressed, but Langford backtracked, claiming a guess. A near breakthrough came in the tower. Poirot re-examined the loose window bar, climbing the ivy to test its strength. The vines held his weight, suggesting a possible entry. But the bar's bolts, though loose, required internal access to remove. A staged impossibility? He found a tiny metal shard near the bar, matching the pedestal's scratch. "A tool." "Hastings," he said, his eyes blazing. "They are stumbling." Hastings shivered. "But the locked room, Poirot, it defies reason." "Reason, mon ami, is our weapon," Poirot replied. "The echoes of the past have spoken, and the truth is near." Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm. The third evening at Violet Tower descended with a restless hush, the drizzle outside weaving a grey curtain over the Surrey hills. The manor's opulent halls, once vibrant with masquerade revelry, now felt like a stage for a tragedy nearing its climax. Hercule Poirot stood in the conservatory, his impeccable black suit absorbing the dim light of a single lamp. His green eyes, sharp as ever,
studied a small notebook filled with meticulous jottings, his waxed moustache twitching as his mind raced. Captain Hastings, pacing nearby, clutched a brandy glass, his face taut with anticipation. "Poirot, we're drowning in clues," Hastings said, his voice edged with frustration. "The ankh, the talc, the hidden panel, that blasted clock. It's all a jumble. Are we any closer to catching this fiend?" Poirot closed his notebook with a snap, his expression serene yet intense. "Mon ami, the jumble is the killer's design, a tapestry of deception, but the threads are aligning. Tonight, we tighten the noose." The guests, confined by the impassable roads and their own suspicions, gathered in the drawing room, their faces pale under the chandelier's glow. Lady Evelyn Beaumont, her elegance fraying, clutched her ankh-engraved bracelet, her eyes darting nervously. Miss Clara Beaumont, subdued and tearful, sat apart from Victor Langford, whose scar seemed to pulse with his agitation. Dr. Elias Thorne, his spectacles fogging, fidgeted incessantly. Mrs. Isolde Hargrove, rigid as stone, gripped her pearls, her gaze icy. Mr. Graves, the butler, stood by the door, his stoic facade unshaken despite the shadow of the duplicate key. Poirot began with a bold summation. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice
Could deliver a small object, perhaps the dagger, but not a person. The fresh oil on its hinges suggested recent use. "The killer staged the scene," he said, "but how did they bolt the door from within?" A new clue emerged. A servant found a tiny brass screw in the tower's staircase, matching the metal shard near the window bar. Poirot examined it, his magnifying glass glinting. This screw, he said, held something in place, perhaps a device to manipulate the bolt. He hypothesized a mechanical trick, but testing revealed the bolt's weight required direct force. The screw then was another red herring, dropped to mislead. Poirot revisited the mask's ankh scratches, now suspecting they were etched post-murder to suggest a curse. The talc residue, concentrated near the eye-holes, hinted at a cosmetic trace, but Clara and Evelyn both used talc. A distraction, Poirot noted, but the amyl nitrate vial in the greenhouse is more telling. He confronted Dr. Thorne about the vial. Thorne, sweating, insisted, "It's not mine. I keep mine locked in my bag." Poirot produced the half-empty vial, its label matching Thorne's medical kit. Then how did this reach the greenhouse? Thorne had no answer. His motive, affair and debt growing heavier. Clara's blood-stained glove was another puzzle. Poirot examined it again, noting the blood's freshness and the tear's precision, as if cut deliberately. This was planted, he said, but by whom? Clara, tearful, swore she'd lost the glove days before, yet a maid recalled seeing her wear it the morning of the ball. Langford's stopped watch, cracked at 1:15 a.m., was questioned further. A footman confirmed seeing Langford adjust it during the ball, contradicting his claim of a prior break. "Why lie, Monsieur Langford?" Poirot asked. Langford muttered, "It's nothing, a mistake," but his agitation betrayed him. Mrs. Hargrove's ledger entry and loan deepened her motive. Poirot found a second document in Beaumont's desk, a draft will naming Hargrove as a major beneficiary. "You stood to gain much," he said. She snapped. "I deserved it after his theft." Graves' duplicate latch's position aligned with the pedestal, suggesting a staged bolt. Confrontations flared. Clara accused Langford of planting her glove to frame her. "You want the money for yourself," Langford retorted, "and you'd do anything for it, even kill." Thorne, defending Evelyn, accused Hargrove of forging the will. Hargrove laughed coldly. "You're all guilty in your hearts." Poirot's trap from Chapter 4 paid off.
Thorn, rattled by the footprint comment, let slip. No one could have planted talc that precisely. How did he know the talc's placement? Poirot pressed, but Thorn backtracked, claiming a guess. A near disaster struck at dusk. As Poirot examined the tower's exterior ivy, a loose stone fell from the spire, narrowly missing him. Hastings gasped, "Another attempt, Poirot!" The stone's edge was chipped, as if pried loose. Poirot found a crowbar hidden in the shrubbery, its handle bearing traces of glove fiber, matching Clara's torn glove. By nightfall, Poirot gathered the guests in the dining hall, his voice steady but commanding. The killer's plan unravels. The panel, the screw, the talc, they are distractions. But the ink, the latch, the amyl nitrate, these are truths. The murderer is desperate, for justice approaches. A final clue. A housemaid reported seeing a shadow near the tower at 1:25 a.m., moments before the clock's chimes stopped. The shadow moved toward the greenhouse, where the amyl nitrate was found. Poirot hypothesized the killer used the drug to weaken Beaumont, staging the dagger wound to mask a subtler crime. The guest's paranoia peaked. Evelyn clutched Thorn's arm, whispering, "We're not safe." Clara sobbed, "Someone's framing me." Langford glared at Graves, who remained impassive. Hargrove muttered, "The curse claims us all." Poirot paced the conservatory, his mind weaving the clues. The latch, the ink, the shadow. "The killer is clever," he told Hastings, "but their desperation betrays them."
"We're so close," Hastings said, his voice low. "The latch, the amyl nitrate, that crowbar, surely they point to the killer. But that locked room still baffles me. How did they do it?" Poirot closed his notebook with a deliberate snap, his expression one of quiet triumph. "Mon ami, the locked room is no longer a mystery, it is a trick, and the trick is unraveling. Today, we unveil the shadows and expose the truth." The guests, worn by days of confinement and suspicion, gathered in the drawing room, their faces pale under the chandelier's muted glow. Lady Evelyn Beaumont, her elegance strained, clutched her Ankh-engraved bracelet, her eyes flickering with fear. Miss Clara Beaumont, subdued and tearful, sat apart from Victor Langford, whose scar seemed to pulse with his agitation. Dr. Elias Thorne, his spectacles slipping, fidgeted nervously. Mrs. Isolde Hargrove, rigid as ever, gripped her pearls, her gaze icy. Mr. Graves, the butler, stood by the door, his stoic demeanor unshaken, despite the ink-stained cuff and duplicate key. Poirot began with a commanding presence. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice clear and resonant. "The murder of Lord Reginald Beaumont was a performance, a masquerade within a masquerade. The locked room, the sinister mask, the dagger, they were props in a carefully staged act. But the killer's script has flaws, and we shall reveal them." He addressed the clues systematically, dismantling the red herrings. The silk thread, matching Lady Evelyn's gown, was too perfectly placed on the dagger's hilt. "A distraction," Poirot declared, "planted to implicate her." The violet petal, found in multiple locations, was from the greenhouse, accessible to all. Another misdirection, meant to confuse. The smudged footprint, size 5, fit Clara but was dusted with talc. A deliberate forgery to cast suspicion. The anonymous letters, in elegant script, were written with ink matching Graves' cuff, but Poirot noted, "The handwriting is disguised, a clever ruse to sow chaos." The hidden panel in the tower chamber, however, was damning. Its label matched Thorne's medical kit, and its half-empty state suggested use.
This was no accident, Poirot said. It weakened Beaumont's heart, making the dagger's work easier. Poirot turned to the tower's secret latch, found behind the tapestry. He demonstrated its function. A narrow slot, barely 6 inches wide, could release a small object into the chamber. The killer knew of it, he said, from the estate's history, but it was not for entry. It was for the dagger. He hypothesized that the weapon was placed post-mortem, the bolt manipulated via a subtle trick. A new clue emerged. A groundskeeper found a torn scrap of paper in the greenhouse, bearing the word Unc in the same elegant script as the letters. Poirot compared it to Graves' ink-stained cuff. A near match. "Monsieur Graves," he said, "this ink betrays you." Graves paled, insisting, "I handle his lordship's correspondence. Ink is common." Poirot noted a faint tremor in his hand. Confrontations intensified. Clara, tearful, accused Thorne of planting her glove. "You're a doctor. You could have staged it all," Thorne retorted, "and you could have slipped amyl nitrate in his drink, desperate for money." Langford accused Hargrove of forging the will to secure her loan. "You'd kill for that land," Hargrove snapped, "and you'd kill for revenge." Poirot's trap from earlier chapters bore fruit. Thorne, rattled by the talc comment, had revealed knowledge of its precise placement. Now, Langford slipped again, mentioning the latch's location. "How did you know it was behind the tapestry?" Poirot asked. Langford stammered, "I heard it from a servant." No servant corroborated this. A breakthrough came from the coroner's final report, delivered by telegram. Beaumont's death was confirmed at 1:30 a.m., caused by a single dagger strike, but traces of amyl nitrate in his blood suggested inhalation moments before. The high heart rate indicated distress, not just a weak heart. Poirot hypothesized. The mask's eye holes, lined with talc and amyl nitrate, delivered a fatal dose when Beaumont wore it. The dagger made complex by misdirection. By evening, Poirot gathered the guests in the dining hall, his voice commanding. The killer used the mask's curse as a veil. The amyl nitrate delivered through the mask weakened Beaumont. The dagger placed via the latch created the illusion of a locked room stabbing. The letters, the glove, the petal, all to confuse. But the ink, the crowbar, the shadow at 1:25 a.m., these betray the truth. A final twist. A maid reported finding a vial of ink in Thorne's room, matching the anonymous letters. Thorne, cornered, stammered, "I use it for notes." But Poirot found a draft letter in his handwriting, accusing Evelyn. A test discarded. "You wrote to distract," Poirot said. Thorne's face crumpled. The guest's paranoia peaked. Evelyn clutched Thorne, whispering, "They'll blame us." Clara sobbed, "I'm innocent." Langford glared at Graves, who remained impassive. Hargrove muttered, "The mask cursed us all." Poirot paced the conservatory, his mind a whirlwind of connections. The latch, the wire, the ink. "The killer is cornered," he told Hastings, "but they fight like a trapped animal. The shadows are lifting." Hastings shivered. "But who, Poirot? And why the mask?" "The mask," Poirot said, his eyes blazing, "is the key. Its curse is a lie, but its purpose is true." Chapter 9. The Final Deduction. The fourth evening at Violet Tower descended with an electric stillness. The Surrey hills cloaked in twilight as the violet stone spire cast long shadows over the estate. The manor's once opulent halls, now heavy with suspicion, seemed to hold their breath. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand drawing-room, his diminutive frame commanding the space like a conductor before a symphony. His black suit was pristine, his waxed moustache perfectly symmetrical, and his green eyes blazed with the clarity of a man who had solved the unsolvable. Captain Hastings, seated near the fireplace, gripped the armrests of his chair, his face a mix of awe and anticipation.
Poirot, this is it, isn't it? Hastings whispered, his voice tight. You've cracked the locked room. Who's the hands?
Poirot began with a commanding flourish. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, his voice resonant and deliberate. The murder of Lord Reginald Beaumont was a masterpiece of deception. A locked room crime designed to defy logic. But logic is my weapon, and the killer's mask is slipping. Let us reconstruct the crime. He paced slowly, his cane tapping the floor. Lord Beaumont entered the tower chamber at 1 o'clock, wearing the sinister mask of Arkin. The staircase door was locked by Monsieur Graves. At 2:03 a.m., Lady Evelyn's scream alerted us to his death. A dagger in his chest, the chamber bolted from within, the windows barred. An impossible crime, oui? No, the impossible is merely a curtain, and we shall draw it back. Poirot addressed the clues, dismantling the red herrings. The silk thread, matching Lady Evelyn's gown, was planted to implicate her. The violet petal, found in multiple places, came from the greenhouse, a distraction accessible to all. The smudged footprint, size 5, was dusted with Clara's talc to frame her. The anonymous letters, in elegant script, sowed chaos, their ink matching Monsieur Graves' cuff. But these are shadows, not substance. He turned to the true clues. The amyl nitrate vial found in the greenhouse was used to weaken Beaumont's heart. The mask's talc residue, concentrated near the eye holes, delivered the drug when he wore it. The unk scratches, etched post-murder, mimicked the curse to mislead. The secret latch behind the tapestry, known from the estate's history, allowed a dagger to be placed in the chamber. The loose window bar, scratched by a crowbar, suggested a false entry. And the stopped clock at 1:20 a.m., tampered with, obscured the true time of death. Poirot paused, his eyes scanning the guests. The killer is among you, and their motive is clear. Greed, betrayal, and fear of exposure. Let us name them. The room held its breath. Poirot pointed to Dr. Elias Thorne. Monsieur Thorne, you,
The tower. I was in the ballroom. Poirot shook his head. No. The shadow seen at 1:25 a.m., moving toward the greenhouse, was you, retrieving the amyl nitrate. You climbed the ivy to the loose window bar, which you loosened earlier with the crowbar, to enter briefly and stage the scene. The stopped clock, your doing, hid the true time. Death came at 1:20 a.m., from the drug, not the dagger. He produced the ink-stained vial from Thorne's room. You wrote the anonymous letters to distract, but the ink betrayed you. The crowbar's glove fibre, matching Clara's, was a plant to frame her, using her stolen glove. The ink scratches were your flourish, echoing the curse to mislead. Lady Evelyn sobbed. Elias, no! Thorne's face crumpled, but he rallied. You've no proof. The amyl nitrate was for his treatment. Poirot held up the coroner's report. Traces in his blood confirm inhalation, not injection. Your vial in the greenhouse, half empty, seals your guilt. Clara gasped. You monster. Langford lunged, restrained by Hastings. Hargrove muttered, Justice at last. Graves remained silent, his eyes flickering. Poirot addressed loose ends. The duplicate key, Monsieur Graves, was a red herring. You hid it out of loyalty, suspecting it might be used to frame you. The silk thread and petal were planted by Thorne, using items from Lady Evelyn and Clara. The stopped watch, Langford's, was a coincidence, broken in a dance, as Clara confirmed. Thorne broke, his voice hoarse. I didn't mean to kill him. I only wanted to scare him. The amyl nitrate was to weaken him, make him pay. But he collapsed.
I panicked, staged the dagger to cover it. Poirot nodded. A confession, at last. You underestimated the drug's effect on his weak heart. Murder, intentional or not, is murder. The room erupted in chaos. Evelyn fainted, Clara sobbed, Langford cursed. Hargrove clapped slowly, a grim smile on her lips. Graves summoned constables, who had arrived with the clearing roads. Thorne was restrained, his head bowed.
Had cloaked the estate in dread. Hercule Poirot, his black suit as impeccable as ever, stood in the conservatory, gazing at the gardens where the first signs of autumn's end flickered in golden leaves. His green eyes, sharp yet softened by triumph, reflected a mind at peace. Captain Hastings, sipping tea at a wicker table, looked at his friend with admiration. "Poirot, you've done it again," Hastings said, his voice warm with relief. "Thorne's confession, the locked room unraveled. It's nothing short of miraculous, but I still can't believe how you pieced it all together." Poirot's waxed moustache twitched in a modest smile. "Mon ami, it is not a miracle, but method. The little grey cells, they see the pattern where others see chaos. The truth, it always reveals itself to those who listen." The guests, their numbers diminished by Dr. Thorne's arrest, gathered in the drawing-room for a final reckoning. Lady Evelyn Beaumont, her elegance restored but her eyes haunted, sat by a window, her ankh-engraved bracelet glinting faintly. Miss Clara Beaumont, her vivacity returning, held a handkerchief, her tears now of relief rather than fear. Victor Langford, his scar less menacing in the morning light, smoked quietly, his gaze distant. Mrs. Isolde Hargrove, her pearls clutched less tightly, sat with a newfound calm, her resentment softened. Mr. Graves, the butler, moved with his usual precision, serving coffee with a steadiness that belied the turmoil of days past. Inspector Japp, returned from London with constables, stood by the fireplace, his notebook closed. "Poirot, you've outdone yourself," he said, a rare grin breaking his gruff demeanour. "Thorne's in custody, and his confessions ironclad. But walk us through it one last time, for the record, and to settle these folks' nerves." Poirot inclined his head, his voice clear and deliberate. "Mesdames et messieurs, the murder of Lord Reginald Beaumont was a crime of cunning, disguised as an impossible act. Allow me to explain, step by step, how the shadows were lifted." He paced the room, his cane tapping soft. "Retrieve the vial earlier, planting it to deflect suspicion," he continued. Thorne then climbed the tower's ivy, accessing the loose window bar he had tampered with earlier using a crowbar. He entered briefly, not to stab, but to stage. He placed the dagger from Beaumont's collection in the corpse's chest, using the secret latch behind the tapestry to deliver it from the dumbwaiter shaft. A thin wire, threaded through the latch, pulled the chamber's bolt shut, creating the illusion of a sealed room. The wire, removed via the shaft, left only a brass screw and metal shard as traces. Poirot turned to the red herrings. The silk thread, matching Lady Evelyn's gown, was stolen from her room to implicate her. The violet petal from the greenhouse was scattered to confuse. Clara's petal and Hargrove's shawl were deliberate plants. The smudged footprint, size 5, was dusted with Clara's talc to frame her. The anonymous letters, written in elegant script with ink from Thorne's vial, sowed discord among you all. Even Monsieur Graves' duplicate key was a distraction, hidden by him out of fear of being framed. He addressed motives. Thorne's debts, compounded by Beaumont's threat to expose his affair, drove him to desperation. He intended only to weaken Beaumont, to force payment, but the amyl nitrate was too potent.
In panic, he staged the stabbing to mask the true cause, a heart attack induced by the drug. Lady Evelyn, her voice trembling, spoke. "Elias, he never thought he could do this." Poirot nodded gently. "Love and fear, madame, are powerful forces. They clouded his judgment." Clara, wiping her eyes, said, "I thought it was me they'd blame. My glove, my talc." Poirot smiled. "Your innocence was clear, mademoiselle. The killer used your belongings to obscure his path." Langford, exhaling smoke, muttered, "I knew Beaumont was trouble, but this—" Poirot inclined his head. "Your watch, stopped at 1:15 a.m., was a coincidence, broken in a dance, as Clara confirmed." Mrs. Hargrove, her tone softer, said, "I hated Reginald, but I wanted her husband's legacy."
Graves resumed his duties, the manor slowly returning to order. Poirot and Hastings walked the gardens, the violet tower glowing in the sunrise. "What a case, Poirot," Hastings said. "The mask, the latch, it was like a stage play." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied, twirling his cane. "A tragedy, but one we have resolved. The mask of Aken was no curse, only a tool for greed, yet its legend will linger in these halls." As they prepared to depart, a final moment of reflection came. A groundskeeper clearing the greenhouse found a small ankh pendant dropped in the haste of Thorne's movements. Poirot pocketed it, a memento of the case, a symbol of life, he mused, used to bring death. How poignant! The Rolls-Royce awaited to take them to the station, the manor receding into the hills. Hastings, settling into the car, said, "Back to London, then. Any more mysteries waiting?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Always, mon ami. The world is full of puzzles, and the little grey cells are never idle." As the car wound through the countryside, Violet Tower stood serene, its secrets laid bare, its dawn of justice complete.